Hello and welcome to another TV Central podcast. I'm Aaron Ryan. Today we have a very, very special guest. Pete Everett created that much attention after he was let go from Ready Steady Cook that it attracted as many hits to this site as many primetime shows do. Pete has been very busy since his departure, doing a lot of travelling, but I finally tracked him down. Peter Everett, thanks for joining me.
Great to be with you, Aaron. How are you? And hello to everyone else out there in podcast land.
Well, fantastic. So tell us about what you've been up to since Ready Steady Cook finished for you.
Well, after Ready Steady, I fled overseas. It was good, I just needed to get away because I got tired of all my friends going, I'm so sorry, and da 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 da. So it was just time to go, it was, I don't know about embarrassing. It was very hard. I said to someone, for me, losing Ready Steady was like sort of losing a child, you know, and you have no control in it. You had to let go of the child, and you had no control. Um, so it was very hard for me, and I just had to go away and do some healing. So it was good. It was good. It was good. I went.
Well,
I'm back.
surely your most popular television career highlight was the appearance on Skating on Thin Ice in
I
'05.
hated. I hated that. You crazy.
What was
Um,
that like?
it was a terrible time. Well, breaking a leg, getting blood clots.
Hmm.
I'm getting fatter because I don't do the exercise I used to anymore. I'm not getting compensated from it. Was very odd and making it very difficult. I was with an insurance company. Can I name them or not? But what was it? Allianz. I'm saying it, and I'd send in all my receipts. I don't know if anyone else has had this experience. They would lose them. I'd send another copy because unusual for me. I was sorry. I'd send copies, photocopy them and send them, and three times until that company actually acknowledged. And because I sent it registered mail, and
Mm.
then it was very difficult from there on in. And you almost feel guilty to get sick. It was none of my doing. Plus, I was put in ice hockey boots from the start, not training boots or training ice skating boots, which I was the only one put in them. I was told later when I found out through Jamie Drury, who made me aware of what I was wearing and why I kept falling back and hitting my back and head all the time, and makes great TV but not good for the body, was that yes, that they told me why I had these boots was because there weren't I, ice skating, training ice skating boots in my size anywhere in the world. I said to them, I said, what a load of nonsense. Talk about misuse of people and power. But
Mm.
anyway, that was a terrible experience. You shouldn't have asked me because I could go in for a whole podcast on that. So, moving on.
Well,
Next question, Aaron.
this may even get a longer response if we go back to the
Oh,
very beginning. Queensland boy, tell me about growing up and your family.
Queensland. Well, I was born in Charleville in central Queensland, which is a sheep country. My grandparents, who had initially they had dairy and cattle and grain up near Gympie. My grandmother wanted a better life for the woman, and so she actually she she went to Dungog with my father, who when he got out of the war, they bought a dry cleaning business, and which was very brave for a woman to get on a train from Gympie to Sydney and then bus it, I guess, up to Dungog, which is in the highlands up behind Newcastle. And so she stayed there and built a business and was very popular because she was a very people person, my grandmother. She's an amazing woman, very giving,
Mm.
kind, loving soul, amazing, amazing giving. And still learning the lesson about that, giving and never expecting in return. She was very good like that. She'd give and just walk away, not expecting anything. Um, very gracious. But anyway, then she moved, wanted to buy a hotel, so they moved to Charleville, and she built bought a hotel, and my father followed her. And my father married when he was on a weekend down in Brisbane from Charleville on business. And I was born. It was a pretty tumultuous marriage, I think.
Mm.
Well, they separated when I was about 3 or 4, which was dreadful, dreadful time for me. Um, and I am an only child. I have a half sister, but an only child. And so I don't know. I went into sort of fantasy land to just exist because it was painful. There was a loss, and you uh, create, imagine, play. Um, so that was great. I had lots of people, a lot of support from the people around the hotel. They were sort of the uncles and aunts growing up, surrogate uncles and aunts, and it was good. And I left there when I was about 8 or 9. They sold everything, and my
Yep.
grandparents retired to Brisbane. My father bought a hotel in Toowoomba, and I eventually lived with my grandparents because my dad got sick and had cancer from
Shame.
smoking, from early childhood smoking. I think in those days they used to smoke a lot. I still
Mm.
do. What they told, don't smoke, anybody. So he had. I watched him have a terrible death, and it was, again, it's so unfair when you see a good person have such a terrible ending. It's so unjust, really. But
Mm.
you, I always think God works in funny ways, and I remember getting through that. It was a terrible time because, again, I was 12, 13 when he started getting sick, and he died when I was about 15. So I don't know. I took on a lot of characters to survive. At school, I was a bit of the class clown and popular. I was always the class captain and things like that. And school was again my playground, my playmates, because I didn't have any um, family at home, so
Mm.
siblings. So, um, do you want to hear all this?
Yeah,
I'm
but
like going on.
I can assure you that many people are very supportive of
And
you and
you
quite
know,
quite.
as I said to you before, we started, I don't even know what a podcast is, but anyway, I'm so old-fashioned. Ringing on my 1996 Nokia.
Oh,
Um,
excellent.
so yeah, it still works.
Probably works better than the ones today. They seem to always
There
break
you
anyway.
go. There you go. All those mod cons.
So
So
high.
anyway,
Well, I was going to say high
so
school would have been quite hard for you with all of those things happening. So, I mean,
it
what were
was
you?
hard. Thank you. Yeah. Well, it was hard because I mean, I must say, and if any parents listen, for me, the only time I really needed guidance, my father so much, was when I was, 14, 15, 16, going on, wondering what I was going to do after I finished high school. Do I go to uni? Do I go here? Do I go there? What am I going to do? Do I do an apprenticeship? And funnily enough, I used to love cooking. I used to love cooking, and I always thought, I think I want to be a chef. And my dad had a great mate on the ocean liners. He used to sort of head the catering on all those, I think P&O in those days or something. I almost did that, but then, as I say, it all sort of fell down when he got sick, and I just collapsed pretty much and just existed for a long time. And it took me a long time to get over his death. Actually, not till not so long ago. It was weird. Yeah, it was terrible. But and the other thing I understand with
Mm,
young people is that drugs and alcohol. I was, funnily enough, raised in a hotel, but never. I don't drink very much. I have a glass of red or something. I'm not much of a drinker, and I don't do drugs. So I've been very blessed because a lot of people I know at the moment are going through a terrible time with crystal meth. Um,
mm,
and apparently it's an insidious drug, and I've seen a few friends like collapse and now sleeping and living in their cars, lost everything.
mm.
So I'm not for drugs, but don't, if you're going to do it, don't do that one. Do something else. So I've been very blessed in that area that I've avoided it. But I took on, comedy and laughter. Laughter really got me through a lot of bad problems. And in those days, with the VHS, I used to love the old 1930s Marx Brothers movies, and Here's Lucy, and Lucille Ball was a great comedian, and
Yeah.
um, all those sort of people, and Hale's Navy, the Munsters, and all those. Matt, was it Get Smart? Anything to make me laugh, just to bring my mood up, because I was so down, and I had that resilience. I thought it's funny that looking back at now that I actually did go to comedy to just to boost me, just to keep me going, and it did.
Mm,
Comedians offer so much; they're great in the world, aren't they?
yeah, for sure. So, I guess from those years, teenage years, you obviously would have left school, and then later in life, you would have started on changing rooms. What was happening in
Right.
between that?
Well, I bought a couple of houses in Brisbane, and I did them up, and one I sold, and one was rented. And I used to do that in the early days. That's what I really loved, and
Right.
I've always really enjoyed. I was only 18 when I first started doing that. 18, 19. Oh, 19, because I went overseas for a year, and after I left school, and did that whole thing of Europe and then Asia. Because I'd done all of Australia when I was whilst growing up, a lot of school trips. So I thought it's time to push myself and go overseas. So did all that and loved it. But it opened my eyes. I mean, Australia was very different, 30 years ago, I can tell you. So,
Mm.
um, and learned a lot about food. I remember coming back and cooking for my grandparents and family. I cooked stir fries, and they're like, oh, and noodles, rice noodles, like, oh, we don't really eat this. But I said, just try it. And once they did, they loved it. And, pastas, lots of pastas and lasagna and
Oh
um,
yeah.
goulash and things like that. I mean, very foreign. I remember raised, as I say, in Charleville, there was one Chinese restaurant, and you'd go up there on a Sunday night, as when the hotels weren't open on a Sunday in those days, and you'd go up with your with your pot, and you'd buy a pint or a quart of, fried rice and
Are you
curry
serious?
prawns, and
Take your pot.
you took your own bowl. That's
Yeah.
no such thing as takeaway containers. They're maybe more economical. See, no plastic
Mm.
in Parliament. Reuse the pot. So yeah. So anyway, I've always, as far as the cooking thing, I've always loved that, and always loved travel, and and I learned a lot of understanding of people in that time too, because I couldn't speak a lot of the languages, so you learn to improvise as much as you can through gesture and through gesture basically. So I always got on, but funny. Yeah, I love people and I love other cultures. I love exploring. So I really like
Well,
it, and I still do that, as you know. I've just come back, and it keeps us open and understanding of other people and their nature and qualities of other cultures too. We need to be respectful of that, as they do when they're here in our land. I think that's important as well. It's important to assimilate. I can understand that now more so.
so how did you get from I guess all of that life into the Nine Network with obviously with changing rooms and renovation rescue and amazing homes?
Yeah, they were great times. Well, Michael Healy, well, funny, Richard Lyle, who's the chief censor at Nine, I knew, and I was the downstairs boarder at one point in his house too. And I came to
Huh.
Sydney, and that's another story because when I came back from an overseas trip in my early 20s, there was a girl who was a great friend of mine, and she got me introduced me to the Rajneesh, which is, I think they were in Perth quite a bit. They call them the Orange people, not the Hare Krishnas, the Bhagwan,
Mhm.
Rajneesh, Osho.
Yeah.
So I eventually got into that and had the name Anand Pankaj, which was blissful lotus, meaning that out of all the muck blossoms this beautiful flower. Well, I wish I'm sick of the muck. I'm getting better at it. I think I'm starting to bloom a little bit these days. But it's interesting. They had a great sense of humor, and as I said, my name was Anand. Oh, it was Pankaj. And they used to call me Dirty Lily more than Blissful Lotus. So it was a fun time, and I was in that for about 5 years, I think, 5 years. So it was a real self-discovery time. It was hard coming out. It was hard. People say, was it a cult? I was, I think, more in control because I decided when I went in and I decided when I wanted to leave.
Mm.
So, but it was hard coming back into the real world. It's funny, when you're in a, I'm going to say, a meditative state because you're in a, I don't know, you transcend in a different energy, different way of thinking. But when you have to come back to this real world, it was a hard time,
Mm.
actually. So I went into therapy, but that's another story.
Well, well, I said to you that I might throw in a
I didn't
surprise.
tell you. Sorry, I'm prattling as well. But you asked me about the nine. So then I started doing more little places up, and I did jobs for other people in
Yep.
doing units and houses. And Michael Healy, who's the national programmer at Channel 9, heard of me and said, would you supervise the, my house? And um, I did, and I had a team of workmen, and I remember I made a lot of furniture for him, and we recycled a lot of incredible veneers, old veneers from old tables and wardrobes, and I had a great fellow called Michael Owinger who lives north of Sydney. He's a great craftsman, and he made Michael wonderful furniture, beautiful recycled, using recycled veneers that are no longer available. And the place was great, and I, did the colours, and I went to auctions and bought a lot of artwork and try because I love tribal Aboriginal work and New
Mm.
Guinean work. I love the feel and passion of in those pieces. So used a lot of that in his house, and it was fantastic. And then a few months later, he said, "Do you want to work on a TV show?" I said, "No." He goes, "Why not?" I said, "Because I'm very shy." And he goes, "Shy? You're not shy." And I said, "Well, I am. I'm not a performing poodle." I remember saying, "I'm not going to jump through hoops when someone says to do it," and carrying on. And he said, "Look, just come in and." I went, "No, no, no." Anyway, eventually I went in, and eventually I got the job, and eventually I accepted it, and I loved it from the first day. There was a wonderful man called Terry Cox, who's a cameraman, and he saw. And funnily enough, years later we found out we're born a day apart,
Wow.
and he was incredibly passionate about his work and his angles and his shots, and I, on the first day even, I was equally as passionate and wanted. It's important for me to know through the lens of the camera what is the shot, what is the what's within contained in that shot, even the lighting and all that. I love all that. I love all that. I love as
Yeah.
much behind as in front of camera, and you got to know both, I think, and then relax and get on with it. But
Mm.
and Dave Barber, who was a great help, who started was co-producer or creator of the block, he and Julian Crest. But I worked with Dave in that first day ever I worked, and he was a new and budding producer then. And we've been friends ever since. He's quite a lovely man, really, and his family's got a great wife and children. And a very gifted chap, and quite spiritual too. He's very into himself, and yeah, he's good. So that was a great time. And Susie
Yeah.
Wilson, and who was the host, are still great mates. I went to her wedding last year. She now had the baby, little Ruby, and I constant contact with her and go down to Melbourne and see her and her husband Nick and Ruby the
Wow.
baby. So we've all remained friends, and I love that. But it got to a point where I'd had enough of that show. I must admit, I said that's enough for me. The people that we worked with, talent, I hate that word, but the people, the houses we were doing, they they just got a little bit too savvy and a little bit too aggressive. It's like the fun had gone, and they were getting very serious about it and aggressive about it. And I thought it's enough now. But it's amazing when years later, when I was doing Ready Steady, all these young school kids would come and go, "When are you going to go back and do, you know, renovation shows or And even the older people say, "Oh, we love you on this, love, but when are you going to do a renovation show again?" It's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I'm happy doing with what I'm doing, but now I'm free and easy. I'm open to anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe you could buy in a. Uh, oh, that's a bit House and Gardens, really, isn't it? Let's say in and out. Oh, there's
Well, you
always
never know. The genre's back at the moment, isn't it?
the which.
Well, the whole genre of sort of, the homes, gardens, the whole that sort of lifestyle things really coming back into the schedule now. It dropped off for a little while, but now it's very much back in.
Oh, okay. I've been away. I haven't seen.
Well, I mean,
Um,
the blocker you would know it
oh, the
came
block.
came
Yes.
came back and it was stripped, 7 o'clock weeknights, and that was a huge success. And then obviously,
Yeah, well, that's Scotty Cameron's doing. He's a wonderful, been a great mate to me. I can tell you many reasons. But anyway, so okay. And Shelley Craft was in it too, wasn't she?
yes,
I think Shelley.
I'm going to
Um, yes.
Uh, I'm going to attempt to try to articulate this next question as best as I can. Um,
Oh, are these listeners' questions? Is that how this works?
well,
People have written these questions for me, or you've written them?
no, I've written them,
Perfect.
but based on
Right.
some things that people ask about. Now, one of the comments from people on message boards, I don't know if they're curious or not. They just
How
ask.
intimate. All right. Okay, go
All right.
on.
I mean, they do ask if you're gay. In fact, a little. In
I
fact,
did drag once, I'll say that. In a school play, I played for Frances, someone, I can't remember, in Calamity Jane. And everyone said, rather pretty, aren't you? But I guess any at that age, you're quite androgynous at sort of 15, aren't you? 14. Um, so that's my last thing of gay. Gay doesn't mean drag, of course. I mean, because we know a lot of very straight men who love to dress up in drag. So there's many levels, isn't there? Um,
footballers do it all the time.
Footballers do it all the time. I hear that. I don't know. I know a couple, but I don't know personally. Um,
But
yeah,
I did a little bit of I had a look on the net about your personal life, and because obviously celebs,
well, I don't know about your personal life or anyone else's. It's no one's business, really, is it?
well,
I
it's
mean,
not,
to be
but
honest, there's not a lot of personal life in my life as far as sexuality goes because there's I can't remember the last time I was intimate with someone to be absolutely honest about it,
mm,
which it'd be nice, but
mm,
um yeah,
but the
I can admire anyone. Like when I was just in Europe, my God, I went to Spain. I have never seen so many beautiful, amazing looking women and beautiful, amazing looking men. I mean, you can't deny how you can't deny beauty. And um, I say to very straight friends of mine, he's a very attractive man. They go, oh, I don't know. And I go, what do you mean you don't know? You know what attractive is. And they go, well, yeah, I feel embarrassed to say. Well, I said, if no one else was listening, would you think he's attractive? Yeah, he's hot. Like, he's a good-looking guy. He obviously works out. And I go, there you go. So it's fine to say that. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not like you want to sleep with him. You just
mm,
admire him. Women do it. Women seem to do it all the time
of course, yeah.
um, to each other. They can do it. But men go, oh, there's nothing wrong. It's that whole bloody conditioning again. It's all right to appreciate beauty. It's okay to say, it's lovely to see now. Do you know one little thing? It's funny. On one of the series of Ready Steady, there was, I never, because, I don't have a computer and all that stuff, so I never read anything. I wouldn't know anything about myself. It's probably very healthy. That um, someone told me that someone wrote, "Oh, you are very touchy feely. You hug all the men and that." And I said, "But I hug all the women too." And it's also for a bit of effect. We had the footballers on, and I said, I touched his arm, and I said, "Your arm it spans like the width of his forearm was the up. What do you call it? The upper arm. What's that
Yeah,
called? Anyway,
biceps.
his bicep is as big when I stand my hand, which is like 9 or 10 inches wide. Whatever that is, 18, 22 centimeters. I mean, and I remember, and I said, does that go all the way down? He goes, yep. And then he lifted his shirt up, and all the men and women yelled, went, wolf whistling. And I said, well, I said, you should be admired. You work very hard on that body. And I said, could you imagine, ladies, and some of you men, I said, could you imagine 13 of these big men running at you on the field, tackling, they'll go, yes, you can, I can. I said, you're all filthy, you're dirty people. Stop it, be sensible. Can you imagine, in all seriousness, and they all go, yes, I can, I'd love it. So, sex plays a bit of a part in everything, and nothing wrong with good-looking people. And I'm on TV, I'm not terribly attractive. I mean, I'm okay, but, I'm not a stud. So I think it's good to admire people, but the outcome of the hugs, when I stopped hugging, sorry, I go back and forth here, I
Hmm.
stopped hugging, and then all the men, when they come on, they say to me, when they come up, I shake their hand, they go, don't I get a hug? So I thought,
Hmm.
oh,
Hmm.
continue to hug. Hugging's good, and you see now, again, especially in Europe, it's interesting, the whole greeting of, the kiss on either cheek. At
Hmm.
any age, the boys all do that, um, and it's beautiful. If you really care and love someone, you know, give them a hug. And
Hmm.
I always say, I don't want to be crying on someone's tombstone and at the funeral going, oh, if I'd only shown you some love and I'd have hugged you and resolved the issues. I always say, resolve the issue now, get on with it. I learned that from an early age,
Hmm.
from losing people. When my dad died, it was hard. I wasn't so expressive, and I learned from that I don't know. I also think acknowledging that someone's passing when I was a child or affection meant that I probably mightn't see them again, and I didn't want to acknowledge that. So
Hmm.
emotionally, I must admit, at that time I shut down. In many areas of my life, emotionally, I'm quite shut down like that, and yet very open in other areas.
But were your family, like to keep things personal? I mean, the reason I ask is because being in the public figure, I mean, a lot of your personal life comes out as well. People are interested, they read new idea and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, there's very little about you that can be found
Oh,
online about your personal life. I mean, is it just that you prefer to keep your personal life personal, or actually nobody's really asked you and nobody cares?
no one really asked me. No one really cares. I don't think.
Mm,
Um, I don't know, and I don't go around asking people about their personal lives just because you know I'm on TV. I mean, I don't go and ask I mean, a lot of people see the doctor's secretary, where I go to, and I know her quite well, but I never really pry into anything.
mm,
I don't know why people are so interested. You need to look at their own lives and what's going on for them. As we all know, it can be a distraction for yourself, worrying about
mm,
other people's business.
mm.
So
Well,
you
let's
want to know, don't you?
move on to Ready Steady Cook. Your departure came with some controversy, but I was just wondering about your arrival. I mean, you replaced the previous
Yes,
host, Nick Stratford.
exactly. I replaced someone and someone's replaced me. That's
What
just
what were
life.
the circumstances of taking over that role? Did he choose to leave, or was he given the boot in
Well,
favour of you?
I think so. I don't think it really initially they wanted me. I think the difference between Southern Star to Channel 10 wanted a different person than myself. Um, so no, that fellow Nick, his name was. I never met him. I saw the show for a moment, and again, the only thing I thought what was wrong for me with the choice of Nick was his height. In that, when you look through the lens of a camera, again, back to the basics for me, when you look through the lens of a camera, he was very tall, so your shots were very long for close-ups. I know that
Mm,
sounds not unemotional, but that's the way I viewed it and saw it. So um, you lose a lot of connection with height, when they're overly tall like that, I think. Um,
mm,
and you needed someone maybe shorter and I don't know what else, but certainly that was the first thing I thought that was wrong with choosing Nick. Was just he was
well,
too tall.
you end up hosting hundreds of episodes of the show. Tell me
Hundred,
about that
eight
experience.
hundred, 800, I think we did,
Mm,
830 or something. Yeah, no, it was a lot. I'd love to have been there for the thousands, but oh, it wasn't meant to be. Um, no, I worked very hard on the show, and when eventually I was selected, I mean, my vision was very different to what I saw. I watched an episode, the old episode of that show, eventually, and then I said, look, this is all wrong. And they said, well, how would you do it? So I wrote out a format the way I would do it, that you'd have someone coming down through the audience. You'd have the audience shown, participating, reacting to the audience, and therefore would be lit. Um, and that is great. I think it becomes like a wonderful, friendly family.
Mm,
Um, People just having a good time, and then that goes through the screen. That warmth and love goes through the screen, and fun and fun. People want
mm,
fun and laughter, as I said earlier. Fun and laughter is huge. You've got to keep laughing in life. I know when I stop, it's not very pretty.
mm,
And so eventually, as I said, I got the gig, and the chefs slowly warmed to me. It took a season. Some of them weren't sure about my touchy feely and self, and also my uh, openness. I prying into their personal selves, and they didn't like that. Funnily enough, like I'm not liking it with you. No, no, no. I never got that personal. Anyway, they learned to trust me and saw that I think, oh, well, I know they think that I never wanted to hurt them, and you know, my exposure of them and also exposing myself, a little bit self-deprecating like that. I think that's important to show that yourself, but don't take it all so seriously. And this too shall pass is a great one of my favourite sayings of life. Thine own self be true, and this too shall pass. And another one I discovered: there's no such thing as security.
mm.
So I'm learning a lot as I get older. Um, yeah, so slowly that rapport built, and it became more and more friendly, and that the ratings built with that, and the sponsors. We had a huge amount of sponsors and revenue for the company.
Mm.
So yeah, it was terrific. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
Well,
And
let
and again, the people behind the scenes were wonderful. All those people at Channel 10 were wonderful to work with. Really terrific.
let me ask you a fairly direct question. I mean, do you feel you were an easy person to get along with in terms of 10 management and production crew?
Um, yeah, I think I'm pretty easy to get on with. Um, I heard a report. I was told that Rory had said, "Oh, he was very difficult, and it was time for him to move on." I don't know. It's a very easy way of dismissing something. Someone's very difficult.
Well,
I've seen difficult on-air talent. Oh my God, and the demand. I don't think I'm difficult. Let's not forget. Maybe you could also ask executive producers. Do you think that they're difficult and uncompromising and stuck? And
mm.
many, there's a few stories there which I don't want to go into.
I did
But
ask you that question because of actually that quote that you brought up from
oh,
Rory Callahan. He actually said it was me who called him and said, "Don't bother
yeah,
coming back from Bali." It was a hard production with him, so it was time to move on.
that was terrible. There were people apparently from Southern Star then who ex-employed or current, I don't know, but that they'd worked at Southern Star who said that's not true. It was Everett was fine to work with. It was Southern Star who were very difficult and made it difficult for him. They were very quite nasty to me a lot of that time. I just never understood it. You can understand. I've never had it the whole time on TV. Never anywhere. I've never had that. I just
Mm.
I could never understand. And you could ask enough. And look, I don't want to get into all this, but
Yeah.
there are some, and there were some nasty things said about me when I left, which I'd heard about as well. Really nasty. It's like saying as well, though, difficult. Someone's emotional. Oh, they're very emotional. there's such a dismissive way. It's such an easy word to throw around, if it doesn't suit them. It's a power thing to say. Some are, they're very difficult. Unlike management, would never be difficult.
Mm.
I mean, it's just nonsense. Um, I take, where I work very personal, personally and seriously, and proud. I that it was bad enough getting a phone call and be told all this stuff. Here you are making them a lot of money, increasing product, exposing of myself. And they never really liked the way I did the concept of the show for start, which I never really understood because they got their ratings. Why wouldn't you just shut up about it and get on with it? If they mean difficult in that I wouldn't comply, then that's probably true. I don't know. That means difficult. Um, I'd be interested, like, if they ever wanted to. I mean, we're going to move on in life, but if they ever wanted to find difficult, it's great to be have this interview and talk of the past, but we're all well and alive and doing pretty well in life, and I'm incredibly grateful for life. And if it's the universe's way to say you need to get out of there and move on, then do.
Mm.
No one should be in a bad relationship. I don't care if it's work or personally. Just move on. You know,
Mm.
acknowledge it and let go and move on. It's got to be better. We all have choices in life. We all have choices, and that is a great gift. Freedom and choices, especially in this land, in this country, we have freedom and choices.
Mm.
And people put the buts. It's the but. I can't be but because I can't but whatever. Just get on and do it. Get on and do it. Don't blame others for all the misery and misfortune. Um. Anyway,
I do want to ask you though, what
I'm pretty
about what happened
sorry.
afterwards, because I mean, I know that you don't necessarily, read blogs and what things about you and things like that, but
And I haven't
it's
seen the new chap. Um. What's his name? I'm sorry.
Colin Lane.
Colin. I
Yeah.
haven't, but I said to one of the chefs when he started, I said, please wish him well. I mean, it's a small industry and it's tough out there. And I don't wish anyone any harm. I certainly never said anything ill of Colin, against Colin. I haven't even seen the show. I don't watch it.
Mm.
Um, so I had a lot of reports away from overseas. A lot of people coming up saying, "Are you on a holiday because we miss you on the show?" And I said, "No, I'm
Mm.
being replaced." And it was funny when you said about that phone call. It was in Phuket, really. I was going, and I was at the airport with a young fellow, Tyler Lewis, who lives in Perth. A number of months earlier, his dad, Paul Lewis, had contacted me through mail, saying, my son absolutely loves you. It's got him through so much. He laughs for an hour with you, and when we weren't allowed to go to the hospital until we said, look, if we can, and he allowed us to come, as he said, you're not allowed to talk through the show because I like to watch Pete and he makes me laugh.
Mm.
So Paul sent me this letter saying, our son was an up and coming Swans boy. No, is it Swan? No, it's the black and white. The what's the football team?
Collingwood. Do you
No,
say
no,
black and white?
Perth.
Oh,
In
Perth,
Perth,
West Coast Eagles or Dockers.
West Coast Eagles, not the
Mm.
Swans. Whoops. Whoa, wrong bird. And anyway, he was up and coming a star there, big boy, and got cancer in his legs and had bones replaced, etc. And that's why I was in hospital for a number of months and discovered the show. His father wrote these letters and said, look, it'd be a great honour if you could bring my son or write a letter to him. It would really boost him. So we became friends, all of us, the family. And I said to his dad, look, if he gets better, I'll pay for him to go on a little holiday. So cancer was in remission. He was over here in Sydney. We were boarding the plane, and I saw this call from work, and that's where I received the news about. We think we're moving on with someone younger, newer, and fresh. We think you've had your run.
Mm.
Um, and it was interesting that I got it before. It was a blessing, really, because it put it in perspective for me being away and seeing him getting on with his life, overcoming adversity like that. And he was incredibly positive and happy about the future.
Mm.
And he asked me what had happened. He goes, "It's all right, mate. You'll be fine. You're a talented chap, and you'll be fine. You'll get on with it, mate. I am. You'll be fine." So it was great timing the way that I got it before I went away and being there with him and his situation. But I really did get over it early and quickly. It's only when my friends started asking me, going, "This is so unfair," and then different people who watched the show started seeing me and heard about the story. It was released in the paper that I had to relive it all over again. And it's not good reliving bad relationships. It wasn't
Some
always a bad relationship. It was fantastic working there.
some of those things that happen, though, obviously are behind the scenes, but viewers that are watching, there was basically, I mean, I'm letting you know, an outpouring of your dismissal. They were huge, huge, emotive, overwhelming, with people, to be frank, quite distressed that you're not part of the show. I mean, I'm just wondering how that outpouring made you feel.
Well, that was. I must say, I was numb at first about a lot of things. I don't know my own life. Where do we go? What do I do now? And um, looking at all the options. But it was fantastic to know that people got so much out of the show. It, it's fantastic. Like it becomes an extension of family and that support system to know that there's a lot of positive things being said about you. I mean, that's wonderful. It's wonderful
Mm.
to have that. And as I said, even through Europe, people still came up and gave me hugs and said, we love you and I look forward to seeing you on a new show. And funnily enough, that some of the sponsors phoned me and said, when you get a show or if you've got a concept, we're there for you, all right? I said, all right. So that's nice to know. So now
Mm.
it's just sort of finding something really. But I haven't, I've had a couple of meetings, but nothing concrete. No one's really offered anything.
Because that was
And
going to
I,
be my
I,
next
I thought
question. What?
something might have come up because every show I've really been on has been a winner, And when I left a couple of things at 9. The shows went down, the ratings went down. So as a product, it's there. It's it's I don't know. They they like the character, like me. That's nice.
Have
So
you
we'll see where it ends up.
Have you considered doing anything? This is only going on by the basis of this podcast and some of your questions. I mean, you're very have a good connection with people. You've talked about drugs and things like that. I don't have a concept for a show, but I'm just thinking of something that may not be anything to do with renovating or anything like that, but something to do with families and people and I don't really know, but
Yeah, no, that's good.
is that something that you could think about, or
Yeah, but
or would you just
this
get
is
back into renovation?
again on Ready Steady that I don't think they always liked is the fact of drawing attention to things like, you know, um, beyond blue or suicide, depression, losing jobs, da da da. But that's all real stuff, and it's overcoming, again the adversity thing and getting on with life.
Mm,
And I used to think every show was like a little play. You have your highs and your lows and your laughter and your breaks and your pauses and whatever. And I think people really loved that journey each and every day. They loved coming along on that journey, and we'd say hello to the Greek community, the Lebanese community, um, lots of, whoever, wherever in the world, and it was a great show for including everybody. I don't know,
yeah.
to me it was a fantastic concept, and people from England used to come over and say, excuse me, we prefer this show much better than this. It's much more fun than our show.
Yeah.
So, all those positive responses, there's nothing ever really negative. It's
Mm,
bizarre. Anyway, I don't know. I wouldn't, and I remember in most, in these, any times, but especially these fragile times, I wouldn't be changing concepts and people and products. I'd just leave it alone and leave it how it is. Unless someone was dreadful. And I don't
mm.
think I was dreadful at all. and difficult, as I was told.
Let me ask you one final question. I
All right
just
then.
here it is. What do you say to all the people that have and quite honestly still keep asking for you, demanding your job back and want to see you back on the telly?
Oh.
They'll be listening to this podcast with eagerness to hear about you. What would you like to say to your rather vocal fans?
Well, it's great to see people are so vocal. Stay vocal, everyone. You know, Australia is a democracy, and it's important. Speak up about everything that you don't like. I think that's great. Um, well, I'm flattered. That's fantastic. Gosh. Uh, well, look. Hopefully, we all see each other again somewhere soon on TV land. Um,
Mm.
that'd be good. I mean, the chefs still ring and say, "Have you heard anything? Did they ever invite you back?" And I went, "No." Oh, okay. But they keep in contact. But look, maybe we could do another sort of concept. You just have to twig and change things a little for a new show. It doesn't take much.
Mm.
Um, and there's some imaginative people out there, so I'm sure there'll be a show coming along in no time somewhere on some perfect channel.
Mm.
So stay tuned. Stay tuned. Merry Christmas. I don't think I'll be seeing anyone before Christmas on the television, but no, it's very nice that people are that passionate, isn't it? I,
Mm.
I, to bother. I can't remember ever bothering to ring up or go online or whatever. I don't know. I don't have a computer, but to do all those things to make the effort to say I want that person back or that show back, and it's the power of the people. It's the voice that executives all listen to. So thank you for your power and your voice.
Well, Pete Everett, it's been a pleasure, and from TV Central and all your fans, we wish you well, and thanks for checking
Oh,
in and allowing us to catch up with you.
oh, it's great, Aaron. Thank you for all those probing questions. You're a gem.
Pete Everett, former host of Ready City Cook, an overall legend with his vocal followers. That is all from this podcast. Until the next one, I'm Aaron Ryan for tvcentral.com.au. See you then.